I need you to be honest with me right now. Have you ever had a memory of a show from your childhood that you cannot prove existed? Like, you remember fragments, a puppet, a castle, a girl walking through a mirror, some kind of iguana, but when you try to Google it, nothing comes up. And you start to wonder if maybe you just dreamt the whole thing after eating too many gushers before bed. No, you didn't dream it, didn't hallucinate it. These were not the side effects of a bad mushroom trip or a sugar-induced fever dream. These were real shows. They aired on real networks, and millions of kids watched them every single day. But here's the thing, almost nobody remembers their names. And the stories behind how they were made and how they disappeared are way more interesting than you would ever expect. Today, I'm going to unlock 3 doors in your memory that have been sealed shut for over 30 years. And at least one of these is going to make you grab the person next to you and say, "Oh my god, that was real!" Let us start with the one that was literally filmed inside of a theme park. Adventures in Wonderland premiered on Disney Channel on March 23rd, 1992. And it was absolutely unhinged in the best possible way. The premise was that a girl named Alice, played by a young actress named Elizabeth Harnoy, could travel to Wonderland anytime she wanted just by walking through her bedroom mirror. Every episode started with Alice dealing with a normal problem at home, talking to her cat about it, and then casually stepping through the looking glass into a world of costumed characters, original musical numbers, and pure chaos. And I mean actual musical numbers, like 3 or 4 per episode, full choreography, harmonies, costume changes. This show had no business going as hard as it did. The cast was wild. The Mad Hatter was an inventor whose creations always backfired. The White Rabbit wore roller skates everywhere and worked as the Queen's personal chef, butler, servant, event planner, and basically every other job you can think of. The Tweedledee and Tweedledum characters were played by 2 actors who brought legitimate physical comedy skills to every scene. And the Red Queen, played by Armelia McQueen, was this incredible scene-stealing diva whose catchphrase, "Oh harumph," became iconic to anyone who watched the show. But here is where it gets interesting. The first 40 episodes of Adventures in Wonderland were filmed at Disney MGM Studios at Walt Disney World in Florida, as in, inside the actual theme park. They had 2 entire sound stages dedicated exclusively to this show. After those first 40 episodes, production moved to Los Angeles, and you can actually tell the difference if you watch them back to back. The Florida episodes have this particular energy to them that comes from being made in the middle of a working tourist attraction. And here is a piece of trivia that almost nobody knows. There is one episode of Adventures in Wonderland called White Rabbits Can't Jump that was pulled from the schedule and never aired. Why? Because O.J. Simpson made a guest appearance in it, and after his arrest and murder trial, Disney quietly buried the episode. It was excluded from the Disney Plus release in 2021. It is effectively a lost episode. Oh, and the girl who played Alice? Elizabeth Harnoy grew up and landed a recurring role on CSI as a crime lab investigator, a show that, ironically, was famous for making constant Alice in Wonderland references. You cannot make that up. Now, Adventures in Wonderland was the show that felt like a dream because of how surreal it was. But the next show on this list, it feels like a dream because it literally vanished from the face of the earth. If you watched Disney Channel in the early 90s, specifically if your parents paid the monthly premium because Disney Channel was not free back then, you might remember waking up around 7:30 in the morning to watch a show about a woman named Holly who lived in a house with 3 puppet roommates, an iguana named Iggy, a gopher named Gloria, and a blue jay named Jacob. That show was called Under the Umbrella Tree, and it was not American, it was Canadian. Made in Ottawa by a puppeteer named Noreen Young, who spent 5 years pitching the concept to CBC television before they finally said yes. Young built every single puppet by hand. She sculpted the faces in clay, poured liquid latex into plaster molds, and painted each one herself. Her brother performed one of the characters, a Fraggle Rock veteran performed another, and Young herself performed Gloria, the gopher, who her brother later described as being Noreen herself, a sweet, creative, problem-solving bulldozer. The show produced 285 episodes, it won Gemini Awards, the actress who played Holly, Holly LaRock, earned a Daytime Emmy nomination, and the show had one of the most absurd financial structures in television history. 98% of its earnings went to the Canadian government's funding body. CBC banned commercials during children's shows, and the network also banned merchandising. No Iggy toys, no Gloria lunchboxes. The show was literally designed inside a system that made it impossible to turn a profit. When the funding got pulled, Disney Channel actually stepped in and paid for a series of holiday specials to keep the characters alive. Disney rescued a Canadian puppet show. That sentence should not exist, but it does. But here is the dark part. When Disney stopped airing reruns in 1997, they held onto the broadcast rights without releasing them. For 8 years, no network on Earth could legally air the show. By the time the rights expired, nobody picked it up. Today, over 140 of the show's 285 episodes are classified as partially lost media. Fans hunt for them on old VHS tapes. The Lost Media Wiki has an active search page, and the woman who created the show, Noreen Young, passed away in April of 2025 at the age of 85. If you remember this show, you are carrying a memory that is becoming harder to prove with every passing year. But at least Under the Umbrella Tree had a gentle soul. The last show on this list, it was created by the man who would go on to terrify an entire generation of children, and somehow, this was his wholesome phase. Eureeka's Castle premiered on Nickelodeon's Nick Jr. block on September 4th, 1989.
Nick Jr.?
And the premise alone sounds like it was written during a fever dream. A friendly giant owns a wind-up music box. Inside that music box is a castle. And inside that castle lives a sorceress in training named Eureeka, a dragon named Magellan, a bat named Batley who crashed into everything and always said, "I meant to do that," a pair of twin monsters who lived in the moat named Bog and Quagmire, and a handyman named Mr. Knack. That is the show. Puppet creatures living inside a giant's toy. But here is the part that makes this show genuinely wild. The head writer, the man who created the characters and wrote the scripts, was R.L. Stine, as in the Goosebumps guy. The man responsible for giving an entire generation of children nightmares wrote one of the most beloved preschool shows in Nickelodeon history. Before he was terrifying kids with haunted masks and living ventriloquist dummies, he was writing gentle stories about a dragon who could not figure out how to use his tail. And it gets better. Stine later revealed that the character of Batley, the clumsy bat who crashed into everything, was directly inspired by his own son, Matt, who used to trip over his own feet as a kid and say, "I meant to do that." Stine put his son's childhood clumsiness into a puppet bat and aired it on national television. That is elite dad behavior. The puppeteers were all Sesame Street and Muppet veterans. The Dragon Magellan was so massive that the performer inside had to wear a small fan around his waist because the temperature inside the suit was unbearable. And he had a tiny television strapped to his body because he could not see anything from inside the puppet. One hand controlled the mouth, the other controlled one arm. If Magellan needed to use both hands in a scene, a second puppeteer had to crawl in and help. Nickelodeon called Eureeka's Castle the most ambitious program for preschoolers since the premiere of Sesame Street 20 years ago. It won an ACE Award for Best Children's Program. It was the most licensed Nickelodeon show of its era, with toys, VHS tapes, books, and even a Pizza Hut puppet promotion in 1990. For a brief window in the late 80s and early 90s, this show was Nick Jr. And then, like the others, it faded. Nickelodeon's master tapes of the hour-long episodes are believed to no longer exist. Only 26 half-hour episodes are currently available on Paramount+, and they are edited versions from later reruns. The majority of the original episodes are classified as partially lost media. The show that R.L. Stine wrote before he became the king of children's horror is disappearing. 3 shows, 2 networks, 1 overlapping era of children's television that existed in this brief, beautiful window between the late 80s and the mid-90s when kids' TV was handmade, musical, puppet-filled, and just a little bit insane. Adventures in Wonderland was a full-blown musical filmed inside a theme park where a girl walked through a mirror and a queen on roller skates screamed harumph at everyone. Under the Umbrella Tree was a Canadian puppet show so good that Disney tried to save it, and so doomed that most of it is now lost forever. And Eureeka's Castle was a show about creatures living inside a giant's music box, written by the future king of children's horror, starring a dragon who needed a fan strapped to his waist just to survive filming. These were not fever dreams. These were not hallucinations. These were just the shows we watched as kids. And the fact that most of them are disappearing from existence makes them feel even more like dreams than they already did. If you remember any of these, drop the name in the comments. Because someone out there right now is reading it and screaming, "Oh my god, that was real!" Now, I have been digging into the forgotten shows of the 80s and 90s for months, and there is one show that keeps coming up in my research that has a story behind it so dark, so strange, and so buried that I had to make an entire episode about it. That video is right here. Click it. This one is going to break your brain.